Sky Sports F1. I'm arresting you on suspicion of committing crimes against Formula One for sacrificing truth and objectivity, journalistic integrity at the altar of Checo Perez partisanship, for talking about Checo Perez as if he's Maximilian Verstappen as far as his most recent exploits in a F1 car when he's nothing of the sort, for being disingenuous, for not addressing the matters at hand. You have the right to remain silent, but anything you do say may be held against you as evidence in a court of law. What are we doing really here? This makes absolutely no sense, and I desperately don't want to go scorched earth lest I start coughing and losing my voice again. But it is only a matter of time. That train, of course, is never late, because I was listening to the internationally syndicated Sky F1 and their podcast, which, by the way, came out on Tuesday when the news cycle as far as the Belgian Grand Prix ended on Sunday. But that's another story for another day. So too is the fact that Bernie Collins, legend of F1, one of the greatest F1 minds that you will ever encounter as at July of 2024. But yet and still, Bernie Collins has a mic that makes it sound like she is underwater. But again, I digress. It's only the Sky Sports F1 podcast, the internationally syndicated one, the one that I have to pay £90 via subscription every single month. But you know what? If they don't want to take their podcast seriously and they want to deprioritize their audio, then that's something that you want to take up with them and not me. But I digress. On the podcast, they talked about all the relevant news: Carlos Sainz, the Belgian Grand Prix, George Russell, underweight gate, etc., etc. And that's all cool or fine. Again, it's Craig Slater, it's Matt Baker, and it's Bernie Collins, legends of the game, surely. Craig Slater always has the inside track, absolute legend of the game. Bernie Collins, absolute god tier F1 mind, used to work at Aston Martin, cognizant, proper strategic level god tier. Matt Baker doing his thing on holding the chair pen, proper, take it. But then we get into Checo Perez. Matt Baker asked the question, what was your reaction, Bernie, Craig, to the news around Checo Perez staying? To which Bernie Collins, again, legend of the F1 space, responds, I'm surprised if that's the decision that they're making, that they didn't come to that earlier, make it happen earlier. Copy, agreed, seconded, Bernie. She continues that Checo Perez was strong in quali. However, at the Belgian Grand Prix, it was on a knife edge. Remember, he very nearly didn't make it out of Q2, hundredths in it, indeed. Bernie expounds that Checo Perez therefore was on a knife edge, that P2 could have easily been P15. It was therefore very close. But, Bernie continues, that's not all down to Checo. Hang on, what's not all down to Checo? What, the mediocrity in his performance? The fact that he barely gets out of Q1 as near as makes no difference every single race this season. The fact that he's getting out qualified by Logan Sargent season to date, who is driving a Williams for the avoidance of doubt. The fact that the Yavidra family, who own 51% of Red Bull GmbH, the energy drinks company, were in attendance at the Hungarian Grand Prix. And that's when Checo Perez decided to get greedy with the geometric racing line and take too much curb in the wet, when any F1 driver worth his metal knows that in changeable conditions, if you go on the curb, then you are liable to yeet it into the barrier. That's exactly what Checo Perez did with the Yavidra family watching in situ. This is the time when it's time to show and prove, surely, Checo Perez. Show the Yavidra family what they will miss if indeed they do sack you off, as it was rumoured. Surely keep it out of the barrier, Checo. But oh no, not Checo Perez, not the Mexican Minister of Defence. In the barrier is where he is at home. So what's Bernie Collins talking about? It's not all Checo Perez. Who is it then? Why has F1 become snowflake F1? Why are we celebrating mediocrity at each and every single juncture? This makes no sense. Surely Sky Sports F1, as the internationally syndicated broadcaster, they should be more acutely aware than most that this is F1. Meritocracy matters. This is sporting excellence, is it not? Where the cream are supposed to rise to the top, and if you can't hack it, then you need to defend or vacate. Get out the way, because there are great ones in waiting. Please see Felipe Drugovich. Please see Duhan. Et al. There are a gazillion names that I can throw out there, are there not? Meanwhile, Logan Sargent sits there as if he belongs. So too Lance Stroll, so too Joe Guanyu, so too Checo Perez. So what are we talking about, Bernie Collins? Love that lady to death. Who am I to counter, even rebuttal her, constructively challenge? But this makes no sense. Saying that that's not all down to Checo Perez, as if somehow he can be absolved from responsibility in this melee. That is the Red Bull second seat. Bernie Collins continues, but they have to look at who they could put in that seat. And surely, as at July continues Bernie, that person is not guaranteed to do a better job for the remaining 10 races of the season. What are we doing here? Oh, the humanity. What do you mean? At this point for Red Bull, surely there is more risk to keeping Checo Perez, if indeed we're talking meritocracy, than there is from jettisoning him. What are you doing? He's proving himself incapable beyond reasonable doubt season to date of delivering to any sort of capability. He's in a Red Bull, for Pete's sake, being outqualified by Logan Sargent. What are we doing here? This makes no sense. Bernie Collins continues, they can't look at anyone in the junior team and say they will definitely do a better job. Really? Liam Lawson? Danny Rick? Have you heard of Yuki Tsunoda? Have we seen how he's been performing season to date? You could swap them around in an instant, and Yuki Tsunoda, you can bet your bottom dollar, will improve upon what Checo Perez has done season to date. Take that one to the bank. It's my story and I'm sticking to it. Bernie Collins cites the infighting, saying merely Checo Perez is simply a pawn in a chess match at the moment. Concur, Bernie. There are things going on in the background, lest we forget Christian Horner allegation gate et al. Jos Verstappen doesn't like Christian, nor does Christian like Oliver Mintzlaff and Mark Mateschitz, Dietrich Mateschitz's son. Of course there are these things and they need to be spoken to. We need to bear them, we need to take them into consideration when we're considering the outcomes, which of course at this stage is that Checo Perez will have a seat after the summer break. Craig Slater continues. After the summer break, he takes issue with Matt Baker's wording of the question, saying that Checo Perez will be here after the summer break, not necessarily through to season end, however. Those are two different things, right? And we've talked about this ad infinitum. Liberty Media stepped in. What they don't want is on October the 27th, when it's the Mexican Grand Prix, for there to be no one in attendance. And that will be the eventuality should Red Bull, via Christian Horner, choose to jettison the man formerly known as the Mexican Minister of Defense before the 27th of October, post the 27th of October, after the Mexican Grand Prix. However, that's a completely different proposition, is it not? Craig Slater continues, it's not out of the question that Checo Perez won't last after the 27th of October, after the Mexican Grand Prix. It's not out of the question then that Checo Perez gets jettisoned between then and the end of the season. Oh, the humanity. And then they continue. And this is where it gives rise to all of this conspiracy theory talk, tinfoil hattery, whataboutery nonsense. Craig Slater and Bernie Collins expound upon the circumstance thus, saying that the style of car that Max prefers, certainly that's the development tree that Red Bull have gone barking up. What are they talking about here? Well, he likes it front-ended, doesn't he? Super sensitive. Alex Albon, for the avoidance of doubt, has described it as having your mouse sensitivity settings dialed up to 1,000. That's how Max likes it. And for other drivers who aren't acclimatised to that sort of handling dynamic, Alex Albon says it's unnerving. Bernie Collins agrees. Craig Slater too, saying that a lot of drivers have really struggled in that car. That Checo Perez, in that sense, isn't exceptional. Please see Alex Albon. Please see Pierre Gasly. Please see Daniel Kvyat. They have all struggled. But again, for me, this doesn't absolve Checo Perez, as good as we all know he is. Surely then, he should be able to adapt. He has this understeery street king style. Rear bias or rear limited settings is what he prefers. Please see a Monaco or a Baku as an example. But surely he's had 3 years to adapt for this now. Surely you evolve or die in Formula One. So elitist, so based on meritocracy is it as a sporting endeavour. Slater and Collins continue. If this continues as far as Checo Perez's underperformance season to date, then they will not win the Constructors. No, kidding, Sherlock. There are guys and girls who work for Red Bull who are indeed depending on the bonuses that they will receive from the Constructors' Championship. This is what we're talking about here. Livelihoods are indeed at stake. So what are we doing, Red Bull? Why are we prioritising live audiences, indeed ticket sales at the Mexico Grand Prix, over the livelihoods of Red Bull Racing Team? The engineers, the strategists, all of those people are depending on the money, the bonuses that they will receive from the Constructors' Championship. That's what's at stake here. Bernie continues, it's been 3 years of championship winning for Red Bull Racing. Red Bull haven't done anything to get on top of this, making sure that both drivers are scoring points. They should have been able to see this a mile coming. It will always be convergence in the latter stages of rule, a tech spec as it is now. This is the penultimate year. 2025 will be the last. 2026, brand new rules and regs come in. This is always the case. You remember 2021, it was close. Wheel-to-wheel combat, automotive pugilism between Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson, Hamilton and Maximilian Verstappen, as near as makes no difference, every single week. This is what happens in Formula One. And Bernie Collins even has a point here. However, look, if we're talking about responsibility, she says that other teams, as far as McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, they've all nailed the drivability of their car. They have themselves a setup where the second driver can score points. Well, the problem is, Bernie, where that falls down, is that the likes of McLaren, there is no second driver, because Lando Norris and Oscar Jack Piastri are both killers. Same for Mercedes, Lewis and George. Same for Scuderia Ferrari, Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Both of them are killers. There is no weak link. Red Bull Racing, however, in Checo Perez have themselves a weak link. This dude as a driver cannot step up to the plate. As far as Maximilian Verstappen and his partnership, he's never going to be his equal. Never, ever. How can you blame Red Bull for pursuing a design philosophy that is the quickest, that coincidentally Maximilian Verstappen can handle and optimise for, especially when you look at Checo Perez's results of late, and he has been doing nothing, bringing in zero to that team. Red Bull Racing engineers back at the factory Milton Keynes look at him with disgust, as they can see their mortgage payments via their bonuses that they're supposed to earn on the back of winning the Constructors disappear up the wall. Look at this. Craig Slater said that Checo has earned 30-something% of what Max Verstappen's earned season to date in the driver's standing. False. Currently it stands at 47.29%. Still not good enough, however. Max Verstappen, 277 points in the driver's standing. Checo Perez, 131. That, ladies and gents, isn't good enough. Let's go in reverse chronological order as far as his results, because ultimately they must stand the test of the time, right? Women lie, men lie, numbers do not. In Belgium, 7th, he would have been 8th, benefited of course from George Russell's disqualification. Hungary, 7th, the British Grand Prix, 17th, 7th again in Austria, Spain 8th, Canada retired, Monaco retired, Imola 8th. As near as makes no difference, every single race, 7th or 8th position in a Red Bull Racing car. What are we doing? The last 7th per Matt Baker on the Sky Sports F1 broadcast. Apologist settings. Checo Perez, 28 points over the last 7 since Miami. Maximilian Verstappen, 141. What are we doing, ladies and gents? This makes no sense. 5 times more than Checo Perez's total is what that's the rate at which Maximilian Verstappen is scoring points. As at the 31st of July 2024, the gap in the Constructors' Championship with 10 races to go is 42 points. That is nothing. Remember, McLaren, the boys and girls in the papaya-coloured car, they have themselves killers in Oscar Jack Piastri and Lando Norris. 10 races, 42 points. That is nothing. Red Bull have themselves a weak, vulnerable underbelly as far as Checo Perez in their driver lineup. Remember, for the avoidance of doubt, an F1 team is only as good as its weakest link. That, rest assured, is one Checo Perez, man formerly known as the Mexican Minister of Defense. Fair play. They've taken the instruction from Liberty Media that they needed to keep Checo Perez with a view to not hinder nor disrupt live audience ticket sales for the Mexican Grand Prix as at October the 27th. Fine. So too, Checo Perez brings in circa $30 million each and every single year. So too does Checo Perez bring in lots of sales in North America by virtue of the fact that they sell energy drinks over there, do they not? All these things matter, but what matters more than anything else in this game, this sporting endeavour we call F1, where margins are fine, where stories are told intense, surely what matters more is performance, or in Checo Perez, formerly known as the Mexican Minister of Defence's case, a lack thereof. What are we doing here?